This is going to be a pronounced lobbying effort now on behalf of Jim Jordan and Steve Scalise as they head into this weekend. The phones are ringing up there from what we hear.
Yeah, and there's another candidate, too, Kevin Hern, who wants to call every member of the 221 Republicans in the House before he makes the decision if he's going to get in.
Okay.
So this is going to be a lot of backdoor wheeling and dealing, phones and text messages traded back before everyone comes back to Washington on Tuesday when the real circus will begin. Trump will be at the Capitol. If they have these meetings where they have them in the past, just to set the scene, it's this big room in the basement. This is where they have all their family meetings. They go down these long hallways. It's not nice. It's not pretty.
Yeah.
And also reporters will be lined the hallway, and then they'll
Do you expect he'll be there, Donald Trump?
He says he will, or he says he's mulling it. So we'll see if he actually shows up. Obviously Trump is famous for, making a decision and then unmaking that decision, or, calling an audible at the last moment. But, as Annmarie mentioned at the top, there's a possibility that if House Republicans change their rules, and there's several House Republicans calling it, that he could be Speaker, which would really throw a whole wrench, not only into House politics, but 2024 as well.
You just see him in the Speaker's roster with the gavel. He'd love that, Annmarie.
I mean, I'm just thinking now we're starting to depart into silly land. Also, I've been in those basements. Those can use a bit of a refurb for sure. Mario, you covered Trump. Do you think he comes on Tuesday? Let's just get this out of the way.
I think to piggyback off of Laura's point, he also became famous for being a reality TV star, right? And so this type of moment where where Republicans rather, are trying to decide who their next speaker will be, where the cameras are all going to be on Capitol Hill, why not come in and host and have a de facto apprentice type of political type of moment, right? Where he's essentially knighting who he wants to be the Speaker of the House.
Kingmaker again, and finally gets his ride to Capitol Hill that he never got. We actually have a bit of news on this reality show. This is, for us, a big deal, because a lot of folks in Washington were looking forward to the opportunity to have the cameras unleashed again, remembering in the last speaker's battle, there were no rules, and C-SPAN just went nuts and brought us amazing drama on the floor.
It was a broadcaster's dream.
Absolutely. We saw things, speaking of Matt Gaetz, we never would have seen otherwise. Bloomberg News, Balance of Power, reached out to C-SPAN, Annmarie. Apparently that will not be the case this time.
No, interim Speaker Patrick McHenry said no. He's not going to allow it. Because they're under the current rules that were set in January.
So keep those rules in place, and those
unfortunately,
cameras are the property.
I think, unfortunately, for television networks.
I'm kind of bummed out, Laura. How about you?
I mean, getting to zoom in on some of those, personal conversations, but alas, not this time.
Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell, by the way, weighed in on the chaos in the House, knowing all the while that he's never really one to give advice to the other chamber. Have a listen.
I have no advice to give to House Republicans except one. I hope whoever the next speaker is gets rid of the motion to vacate. I think it makes the speaker's job impossible, and the American people expect us to have a functioning government.
Mario, is this a done deal? No matter who the next speaker is, we're not going to figure that out today. Their first job is going to be killing the motion to vacate, right?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. At this point, who wants to enter a job, especially with the November 17th date hanging over your head, and you immediately say, hey, if I step out of line, you all have the opportunity to catapult me again, jettison me again, similar to what you just did to my predecessor, 6 weeks ago, right? So, no, I think that'll be part of it. I mean, recall, going back to January, Kevin McCarthy, the 15 votes, he was desperate to make a deal, right? I mean, that was clear. The next person won't be as desperate. And then one other point I'd like to add is the fact that Republicans, and this goes to the point where McHenry may not want the cameras in,
right?
It's been a kind of embarrassing moment for Republicans over the last week or so.
Yeah. The other big decision facing this next speaker is how they get through not just a potential another government shutdown, but this Ukraine aid. And before he lost his speakership, Speaker Kevin McCarthy said he wants to link the border and Ukraine aid. And, Joe, that became very apparent today with the Biden administration putting up a notice. 20 miles will be added to the border in Texas. But President Biden, speaking earlier today in the Oval Office, he said he actually tried to get rid of this. He didn't want to see this. Take a listen.
The border wall, the money was appropriated for the border wall. I tried to get them to reappropriate, to redirect that money. They didn't. They wouldn't. And in the meantime, there's nothing under the law other than they have to use the money for what it was appropriated. I can't stop that.
Do you believe the border wall works?
No.
So this administration is under immense pressure, not just from Republicans, but of course, Democratic-led cities and states. Governor Pritzker sent out a letter yesterday. And yet Biden is saying he doesn't approve of this wall, but the funds are already appropriated. Should they maybe have almost leaned into this because they are under this immense amount of pressure to do more at the southern border?
It would have been, from a political perspective, one way for them to say, look, we're giving you something on the border, even though they didn't have a choice. The law said they had to do it. Yeah. But this is really an issue that Biden is, we're talking about Kevin McCarthy worried about, his hardline flank, his more centrist flank. This is an issue for Biden, too, of he has, his more progressive voters, his younger voters who he's worried about versus, people typically older. Immigration tends to be an issue. But as we see the migrant crisis in these big cities, remember, big blue Democratic cities get worse, you may see the tone change. The issue really will be that whatever little things that Democrats want is not at all what Republicans want. They're talking, wholesale, drones and militarizing the border. And some of the rhetoric we're hearing from candidates is really quite extreme. Whereas, when you actually talk with the foreign policy experts, they're saying, look, Ukraine is our more pressing issue. We got to focus on that.
Well, this is just made for a before and after contrast campaign ad. Mario, you remember what Joe Biden said about this in 2020. Let's just go back in time for a moment.
Trump campaigned on build that wall. Are you willing to tear that wall down?
No, there will not be another foot of wall constructed on my administration.
What about the land confiscations?
Stop, done, over, not going to do it. Withdraw the lawsuits. We're out. We're not going to confiscate the land.
If only he had been told about the 5th of October, 2023. Did he need a better answer to that question today?
Yeah, to Laura's point, we're seeing the president under a lot of pressure that we hadn't seen before. And part of that is because that pressure has kind of made its way into some of these blue cities, right? You're seeing, if you recall, he and Eric Adams had a very warm relationship before. Now it's really strained. Pritzker, who was able to convince the president to hold the Democratic National Convention in Chicago next year, fired off a letter as well. So you're seeing the president start to feel some of this pressure from not just the left part of the party, but more the moderates, too. Pritzker isn't necessarily known to be a progressive, and that shows the dire straits that he's in on this issue.